Okay, welcome to our monthly video meeting. I just have some quick announcements. It's a kind of light agenda, so this may not last very long today. And I'll try to type while I'm talking and still make sense. Okay, and now topic announcements. Okay, so I think you may have seen the email message I sent out. We're going to do a Festival of mypy reviews, which, because of the length of April, still gives us 3 weeks before the next Festival of Small Reviews, so we're not going to be over-reviewed. So anyway, we'll do it in the usual place where we meet for reviewing, which has become Meetpad. So please attend Friday if you can, and we'll just try to knock out some mypy reviews. I think I put a link on the Etherpad to the mypy docs if you wanted to look them over. But I think last time Eric explained to us, how it's working, what his view is of how we should do this. So I think at this point it's really just a matter of sitting down and reviewing. So I'm excited about that. So I'll see you all Friday for that event. And then some upcoming stuff. Because I don't know about you, but Wallaby seemed to, in some ways 2020 seemed to last forever, but the Wallaby cycle seemed to go like really fast. So I want to stay on top of things for Xena. So this week is R minus 23. So 23 weeks away from release. Milestone 1 for Xena is R minus 19. So that's coming up pretty quick. And I said 18 there, which was a typo. Whoops. It's the week of, I should just copy and paste instead of retype this, because we do that. Okay, so Xena Milestone 1 is the week of May 24th, which is basically a month from now. So we got a lot of stuff we want to get done. V2 API, yeah, V2 API out of there, and a really good start on the secure RBAC. So yeah, now the next thing after that will be the Cinder spec freeze. So for people who are working on specs, just stay aware of that. So that's the week of June 21st. And then, oh yeah, and the next thing we got coming up is CinderLib. We haven't released that yet for Wallaby. So I just want to put that out there. All right, so that's R minus 14. So it's the end of July that has to be released, although we can do it at any time. So probably we'll try to do it sooner. So Gorka, when you get a chance, there's a CinderLib patch that you've reviewed and I revised. I think I addressed your concerns, but take a look when you get a chance just to convert master to Wallaby development. And then if that works, I'll revise the patch that's out there with the documentation for CinderLib about doing that transition each cycle. And hopefully,
okay, thanks.
Yeah, when you get it, when you can work it in, just be aware of that. And then I want to, so that's the upcoming stuff. And then the R minus 18 mid-cycle, of course, will be around R minus 18. So right after milestone 1. So I'm going to propose the dates here for people to look at. Okay, what I want. Okay, so I think Wednesday should work for most people, but please, and I didn't notice that there are any major like Python or open source related events around that time. So, but check just in case. And then I was sort of leaning toward 1300 to 1500 because for a while we had some contributors in the Asian time zone and it gets kind of late, but it seems we have more people out west in the USA right now than we have people in the Asian time zone. So maybe it would make sense to make it a little bit later, and then Alan can get a slight bit more sleep. But anyway, so check if you have a preference, let me know. What I'll do is just please check those dates when you get a chance, and then I'll just go ahead, instead of doing a poll, we'll just do the, meeting thing that you can do in IRC and just vote on what to do. But as far as I can tell, those dates are good, so please take a look just to verify that. And that's basically it for me for announcements. Now I noticed Rajat put an announcement here about the Sqlalchemy update. But I just wanted to add, it's not just Cinder, so this makes it slightly less. What would I just do there? Well, anyway, so it breaks Cinder and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, it's not critical at this point, and hopefully Rajat said he thinks its new Oslo DB release may fix that, so that'll be nice, and we won't have to worry. So thanks for keeping an eye on that, and if you could just keep a watch on it to see. So every so often we do have to do something different, but right now it looks like it's broken enough things that they're not going to merge it until it gets settled. Right. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So the Oslo DB patches have merged, and Harvey said that I think he has proposed a release also, and put a depends on the requirement patch to the release patch. So if that passes Cinder, then we can see like if we are fixed or not. So.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah, and then on the topic of release, this has nothing to do with anything, but about the control groups V2, the tooling to do that was just released in RC1. So it looks like by M1, I should have that our conversion to using control groups V2 finished. So that's kind of cool. Okay. All right, that's it for me. Let me switch to Rajat, can give us a stable branch update.
Yeah, so we already discussed this on PDG, like there is train is coming to extended maintenance, so they can do a final release before 12th May. And I've created this Etherpad where you can put your patches, like if you want to make it into train, like you can put the master patches. Like I'm not sure currently, but because the patches will take time to reach train, there are a few helpful links also, like for open patches in all branches. And that's
all right. Thanks for putting that together. Yeah, right. Really good point. It's going to come up pretty fast, and if there's a patch in master that you want to backport, we need to get moving fast. Especially because if they merge this Sqlalchemy change, everything will be broken again. So I think the gates are unblocked all the way down to Rocky, maybe. So we should be cool for train. So thanks for putting that together. I'll go look at those open patches just to see what's going on with those. So train, just as a reminder, right, still supports Python 2. So there's always a possibility that there could be something, weird. So please be careful checking out the backports. Okay. Any comments? All right, I should probably type that in there just so it's in the agenda. Okay. Okay. Any other topics? Okay, so we got a whole bunch of stable releases just before or around the time of the Wallaby release. So everything's fairly up to date, I think. All the gates are working except Cinder Rocky, which is, trying to remember what the problem is. There are two problems. Elode is taking a look at that. One is we have to cap Bandit because Bandit is uncapped in Rocky, but the newer versions break Python 2 support. So that's part of the backport. And then the other part was there's some kind of really weird thing happening trying to install dependencies. And it looks like it may be a known issue. So anyway, there's if you check, there's a patch that Elode has proposed to Rocky, and there's links to this if you're curious. So we're hoping that that's going to get fixed. But since we don't release from Rocky, we're not too worried about it yet. Okay. All right, I guess next thing is there are a couple of requests to look at proposed patches. So actually, Tosky, since you're actually here, I don't know if, let me check the attendance.
For another 10 minutes.
Okay, then let me move you up. Why don't you tell us what that's about?
It's kind of related to that. So the Stein was broken accidentally due to some ordering of patches, and basically that fix that patch fixes the definition of the job so that it works again with Stein.
Oh, okay. All right, let me put that on my list.
The gist of it is that the version of Tempest using Stein is an older one, but so that shouldn't be the problem. The problem is that right now we are using the role which wraps the Tempest execution is always taken from master, and it means that it uses the new things. So one possibility, we discussed these things during the QE side of the PDG. There is a pending patch which should fix these things for everyone by creating a separate role, Ansible role which wraps Tempest for the older branches. But in the meantime, we can unlock Stein on our side with that. Doesn't hurt.
Okay. All right.
And that's it basically. Yeah.
Okay. And then, have you had a chance to take a look at the cinderlib? I forget which one it is, where there's that really weird. Sorry, I'm not being too vague. Give me a second. I'll pull up the review. But it's something about. I think it's in train. So there's something we use in Usuri, but in train we do that job differently and use some Ansible role that seems to be broken. So I don't know if it's related to this at all, but it's only in the cinderlib gate and I think in train. But let me finish typing this in because I'm supposed to be keeping notes in the.
Okay. If there is not enough time now, I will take a look later. There is a difference because in cinderlib, there are some tests which are not run in some branches, depending on which version of cinderlib. And but yeah, okay.
Let me just find the link. Yeah, you don't have to solve this now, but
thanks, Rajat.
And if it looks crazy, don't worry about it.
I posted Brian in the chat.
Oh, did you find it? Okay, thanks.
I even added myself and rechecked it. So okay, let me recheck it because the last logs are from February, so they're probably lost.
So, yeah, maybe something has
fixed itself. Let's see.
Yeah, it was in. So in the playbook, it's using some task. Here, let me give you the link.
Yeah, but I think there have been some changes
Okay.
after that. But
All right.
let's see what
Yeah. All
it
right.
says.
All right. That would be cool. Okay. Thanks for. All right. So you hit the recheck. So that's good. Okay. Great. All right. So take a look at Stein. That review that's up there, and then I guess let's continue. All right. Topic. Okay, so we got two links here. We got the bug. So this is the patch. We talked about this, I thought. And the problem was, right, so what they want to do is a bunch of parallel threads to upload stuff to, I guess, using the chunk driver for anything that it supports. But we're thinking if you're already running a whole bunch of parallel jobs, that this is not going to really help things. I'm not sure that there were comments on the patch, so I guess we should go look.
I did add some comments at some point stating that it's non-trivial because we have multiple layers of concurrency here that can be configured. You can configure Cinder backup to run multiple processes.
Mm-hmm.
You have concurrent multiple requests that you can receive. So, and now each of those operations would launch a series of threads. And this seems to be an optimization for a single backup case, which is not the cloud case. You
Right.
usually have a bunch of backups, and not sure this is really a sensible thing to do.
Okay.
And if we want to do it, we need to consider all the parallelism that we have and try to figure out how to make this easily configurable and reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I'll probably add some comments too. I mean, we looked at this for Glance many years ago, and one of the problems was it was exactly that, right? If we break it up into two, we have too many processes going, you get saturation anyway, and it doesn't help anything. And the other thing is Swift automatically starts rate limiting writes into a single container. So if you don't set your Swift up so that you're putting things in different containers, you're going to start to get rate limited anyway. And so even if you have all these processes, each of them gets slower and it just gets crazy. So I think there are a lot of things to take into account.
And there's also other two dimensions that makes us have to be careful about parallelism. It's the amount of RAM used that we've already had to include some code in Cinder to release memory quickly.
Oh, right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we also have CPU. If we are compressing the data, then you also can have CPU problems if you start running everything, adding more parallelism. So, yeah. So in general, I'm not against the idea of adding some kind of configuration options that allows this in by default as it is now, so that if somebody has some weird case, they may want to do it, but not really thrilled about it.
Yeah,
well, I'm opposed to doing it until somebody presents a good argument for why this is something that's really needed. I don't think that's really happened here.
Yeah, and it might be the case that the way to handle this would be to have like a backup service, not in Cinder, but that would call Cinder so you could spread these things out. Because presumably, people's backups can take place all night. They don't have to all happen at the same time.
Well, they're trying to run multiple threads for one backup,
Yeah,
and it's just I don't know how many people really are in the use case of I want to run one backup really fast instead of running a handful of backups.
right. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think everybody's views on that are known. So hopefully I don't see the person who proposed that being here. Okay. Um, all right. I'll add some comments just to make sure that, I mean, you put a -2 or a -1 on that, Gorka? Yeah, -2. That's a pretty good signal that you should read the comments. Okay. All right, continuing backup after token expiration. Let's take a quick look at that one.
I think we talked about this briefly
I thought so
previously.
too.
And the concern here was they're trying to use thrusts, I think. But we think that if you have everything set up correctly, you don't have to do all that.
Right.
Because if you use a service token, it's supposed to handle this scenario already. If I remember correctly. Because if you have Keystone set up correctly and you have Cinder set up correctly to use the service token, even if the backup runs so long that the token expires, it's still allowed to renew the token or refresh the token, and so it should still work.
Right, and there's a bunch of there's some configurability around that can make it appear not to work even when it's correct. So
we talked about this on IRC, I think, when this was proposed, and I'm not sure if the submitter went and tried to do that or what was found exactly, but I think the assumption right now is that we shouldn't have to implement all of this because it's supposed to already be able to do this.
yeah, and I think on the Swift side, I mean, the last comment on the bug is that Swift service tokens don't seem to be working. Okay, anyway. Yeah, I don't, so is that patch using trusts or something? Hope not.
Well, it says it is. I didn't really look
Yeah,
at the code.
we don't want to get into that. Yeah, because I can tell you the reason why it was done in Glance wasn't because service tokens don't work. It's because I don't think service tokens were available yet. And trusts were like the hot thing.
Service tokens should work in this scenario, right? So, I mean, is that
I think so.
a configuration problem, or is it that there's a bug in Swift or something?
I'm not sure. I'll take a look at this and make some suggestions for what they should look at to make sure that because there's a couple of things you can turn on in Keystone, and if they change the default value of any of those, I haven't looked at this since what was the one before train? Stein, probably. At that point, there were a couple of there were some options where one of them they're supposed to switch the it wasn't deprecated, but there was a warning that the default value would change. So if that has changed and they haven't taken appropriate action, then the service tokens won't work. But as far as I know, Swift uses the same middleware that everybody else does. So it should work. All right, I'll take a note to make suggestions for what they should look at to report back to us, and then we can make a better, I guess I should give myself an action. Okay. All right, thanks. Yeah, we don't want to get into trust though, because I'm not sure what, I thought they were being removed from Keystone anyway.
That part I don't know.
Yeah, and because I think trust predated service tokens, and the problem with trust is they were very complicated to use and kind of overkill for the actual, situations people needed to address. And the service token thing just makes things a lot easier. But anyway, okay. And I guess so. I should also leave comments. All right, that's like it for the regularly scheduled. So let's move to open discussion. Wow, we're just cranking through this. Oh yeah, I haven't sent out a link to the summary of the PTG yet. I'm in the middle of Friday. I got really sidetracked looking at the encryption stuff, and thought I had like a really keen insight into the issue that turned out not to make any sense when I finally wrote it down. So I'm happy to report that. But if you hack the URL of any of the other PTG summaries, you can find what I got so far. Let's see. Yeah, so the thing I thought about, well, it's open discussion. So does anybody have anything they would like to bring up?
My patch for user-facing message for backups is ready, so
Oh,
like
okay.
this, so it's failing one test which I added recently, so I'll fix that. And yeah.
All right. Thanks for awareness. Yeah, I was thinking this is sort of related to your topic, Rashad. I'm thinking for the extra small festival reviews that each person who shows up can nominate one of their patches, to get visibility on it. But I guess the problem is we don't want to suck up time working on, having somebody review one major thing when the goal is to knock out a bunch of small ones. So maybe that's not a good idea. All right. So yeah, forget I said that. All right. So let's just I'm going to put your patch. All right, so I'm just going to talk. So what I was thinking about the encryption thing is, right, so Gorka's got the paradigm shift that we all need to keep in mind, because I think that's a very good point, that all our code has been written so far for the laptop paradigm that, you get a device and then you format it, you lose space, but you know about that.
Well, it wasn't written for that paradigm. That's the paradigm that just happened to occur because nobody was thinking about this stuff.
Well, right. Okay, so I guess let me rephrase. So we didn't design it for that, but I think Well, all right. So maybe this might even be worse. Maybe it was like a completely unparadigmatic implementation. But I think we need to be aware because, right, the new paradigm is that when we say a volume is of a certain size, you should be able to do cloudy operations on it where you keep resulting in a volume of the same size and they don't fail. So retype, encrypted to unencrypted, unencrypted to encrypted, the whole thing. But anyway, what occurred to me is that if we take that as the way of looking at the size, that it's sort of an interoperability thing, we've been focusing on, all right, how do we get extra space for the encrypted case? And what are we going to do about that? Another way of looking at this is how do we shrink the volume slightly for the unencrypted case so that we're always dealing with our gigabyte-sized packages. It's just that inside you'd have slightly less space if you're using an unencrypted volume than you think you would otherwise. But it would be the same amount of user space in both cases. I don't know if that even makes sense, if there's a way to do that.
Well, I don't think we would want to do that because it would make Cinder operations work, but it makes anything to do with moving data into Cinder from somewhere else not make sense. Because if you have whatever image you put in Glance that's 10 gigabytes, it won't fit in your 10 gigabyte Cinder volume.
But if it was created by Cinder, it would work fine. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, right, so you win some, lose some. But I'm just thinking in terms of dealing with our backends. I guess I just wanted to throw out there's another way to look at how we approach this, because I think you can't rely on, right, when you go to use the volume, right, you put your file system or whatever in there, and then you know how much stuff you can put in it. I don't know that anybody would, right, because, if you buy a hard drive, you get some bad sectors, right? So you're not going to have exactly the space that you think you have. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
if you buy a disk and the first day you have bad sectors, you return it because that's not right. So you expect to have the amount of space you paid for and that was advertised. So it's the same with Cinder.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So, all right, I'll go with that. Yeah, all right, but it's so this is a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's just us and anybody who watches the recording. Now, so Eric mentioned that there's some backends that only allocate like in 8 gigabyte amounts, right?
Well, there's one.
Okay, so there are backends that do that kind of thing. So if I request, so if I request like a 1 gig volume for Cinder, right, and we get back, something that's mapped into the backend, how do they keep you from writing more than 1 gig of info into that?
I'm not sure that they do.
Oh, okay. All right, that would be interesting. Okay. So then, because
forget the exact
I'm
not sure that they actually do that.
Because I'm worried about this kind of case. So if we allocate, so the proposal is, so Sophia's latest proposal is we've got, right, the display size and the real size. And the idea is we'll make the real size big enough to hold what we suspect is the largest header. So we've got some slack space that we know is big enough. It's small enough to be way less than 1% of the size of the volume, but it's big enough to hold, right, whatever metadata you need for encryption. But it's probably going to be, right, if we size it right, with the Lux 2, which we sort of have to be ready because it's going to come along eventually into OpenStack, right? I think it's up to like 16 meg because you got the JSON to describe. I mean, it's a pretty elaborate metadata scheme, but you got this big JSON blob that has all this stuff in it. So it can be up to 16 meg. So if we reserve that space, some of it will be used for the head. So we reserve 16 meg. We do a Lux 1. We only use up like 2 meg of it. Then we got 14 meg that's just sort of out there. And what's to prevent somebody from writing into it in their volume?
Because when it's encrypted, the only ones who have access to the actual raw volume are Cinder and Nova. The instances don't get that device. They get the device map that you get after you decrypt. So they cannot go beyond what the decrypted volume has.
Right.
Yeah, because it's abstracted away anywhere that somebody's actually going to be writing data to it.
Okay. Yeah. So all right. Yeah, this is a so we could, if we only allowed encrypted volumes, that would like make this a much easier problem to solve.
Not really. Because to come back again to the problem with sizes and with glance images, because the glance will have tell you a size, and you will have to make that fit into
Yeah,
the.
but I think, right, we can, if we go to create an image, we know whether it's an encrypted image or not because there's some metadata on it to tell us, right, that it came from Cinder, right? So it was uploaded as a volume. And then
No, but the other way, it's an encrypted image and you want to add it to an encrypted volume.
Right. So that should be okay because, right, our 2
Awesome.
gigabyte encrypted volumes hold less than 2 gigabytes of actual data.
How do they get? Because last time we discussed this, we didn't know if we were able to actually create the volume, the encrypted volume with the right size, usable size. As far as we knew, you just use the whole device or the whole partition or whatever.
Well, we still haven't decided that, but I'm not sure I followed the link between what Brian was saying and that detail.
Well, if you ask for a 1 gigabyte volume and the user will end up with 1.9 gigabytes, that doesn't seem right either. Right?
If they ask for a 1 gigabyte volume,
If the user asks for 1 gigabyte encrypted volume and they get a 1.9 because we are creating a 2 gigabyte volume, then it's also a problem.
Yeah, but I'm just assuming that we can make it work so that when you upload, if you upload an encrypted volume to Glance, we should be able to take that and recreate it as an encrypted type.
But
assuming that we hold the encryption types constant.
But you're talking about uploading to Glance, but I'm talking about downloading from Glance. You
Right,
download an encrypted image, and then you want it in an encrypted volume, and the volume you have created is 2 gigabytes, even though the user asked for 1, and then the volume will be larger, right?
No, but what I'm saying is if we only allowed encrypted volumes.
Yeah.
Right. So we could have two kinds of encrypted volumes, like the good ones that are like what we do now, and then ones that you would consider unencrypted because the encryption key would be like all zeros or something.
That still doesn't solve it though, because you can today go and create different encrypted types. And if you make one that's a LUX1 type and one that's a LUX2 type, you still have the same problem.
All right, I'll stop trying to solve this and leave it to the experts. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Jeez. Yeah. All right.
But I wanted to poke more at what Gorka was just saying, because Gorka's, I know you said a couple times that if you create a 1 gig volume and you end up with a 1.9 gig one, it's still a problem. But I think we need to spell out like why that is exactly a problem.
Now you go to an encrypted, and what do you do if the user actually used the 1.9?
If you're doing a migration,
Yep.
well, if you have headers that tell you the size that's required, we could presumably pass that through and do the same thing again on the migration.
But the problem I see, and I could be wrong here, I understood from what you have said earlier, is that we cannot limit, or we are currently not sure if we can limit the user space inside that. So that means that the user will actually get 1.9 usable space. And if they go and use the 1.9, then you come back to the reverse problem.
Well, yeah, you keep saying that, but I'm not sure why that's necessarily the case. Because if you have headers in Cinder, or if you have metadata that tells you the requested size and the actual size, I think you have a way to not have a problem when you get to that scenario, because you can do the migration and request whatever size you need to fit the source.
And you request 1 gigabyte, and then you do the migration, but the user actually wrote.
That's what you do now. But if we have a header that says it's actually 1.9, you can just make it 1.9.
And then you get a 1.9. You suddenly get the problem is that you don't get what you ask for. It's madness. To me, if I ask for 1 gigabyte and you give me 1.9, I say, what is going on here? Why this thing is not doing what I am asking it to do?
But I thought you don't, as a user, you're not going to see the 1.9.
Well, you will, because...
Okay, that's, yeah.
The reason you will is because we don't have a field that's going to like tell Nova when it attaches the volume to not use the whole thing or anything like that. So you're still going to get, if we make it bigger, it's going to be bigger when you use it.
So we could theoretically, right, pass to Nova, right? Because when you do crypt setup, you can tell it the size of the LUX container, right?
We need to look a little bit more at what you can exactly do with that. I'm not sure that you necessarily can.
Because if we could tell Nova when it mounts the device, geez, I don't know.
If we can define the size of the container, of the user space after decryption, then we can. Then it's just a matter of how we fix it, how we let Nova know about this, and how we figure out, like Eric was saying, the metadata, how to move from LUX1 to LUX2, a couple of needs. But the big problem is that, as of now, we are not sure that we can do that. And that is the big problem. Because if we cannot do it, it's problematic.
And then with the QEMU image thing, so for NFS and Ceph, right, the encrypted block devices are really QCOW2s. Is that correct?
Yes.
So with those we have some control over the effective size, or is that not?
It's not clear that we have the control Gorka was talking about.
Yeah.
Because I think the QEMU image tools maybe are also kind of ignoring some of these implications the same way that we were. So we still need to go explore it a little bit, but I think there's still some stuff missing there too.
Okay. Because it seems like if we can specify the size of the Lux container, right, the usable space in there independently, I see, but when, okay. And then make sure Nova's aware of that when it mounts the thing.
Well, if it's done by Lux, Nova doesn't have to do anything because it'll just
When
work
it mounts it, it'll be in the header and it will tell it the extent.
Yeah, but
Okay.
the part that we talked about at the PTG that we still have to go research is how much control can we actually have over all of that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's not obvious from a quick look at man pages and stuff. So me and Sophia are gonna have to sit down and
Okay.
prototype it and run some tests and poke at it and kind of see how it works exactly.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, that was my conclusion was you can do some stuff maybe, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Well, my hunch is that the QEMU image and crypt setup tools aren't going to provide us enough knobs to really do what Gorka is wanting to have happen there. But we need to go find out for sure.
Process control, if we have one of two things, we can make it work, which is one, to be able to define the usable size after decryption, or if we can get the overhead of the headers, the exact overhead of each of the headers, then we can make it work anyway. Because we could create a partition. So on a larger volume, you create a partition, and on that partition, you create it. And the partition has the size that you need. So, yeah, like Eric said, it needs to be investigated.
Yeah. All right. We got 5 minutes left. Any other observations? I think Sophia's not here today, so probably the bug meeting is canceled following this. Which is okay. We can declare bug-free week in Cinder. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording since we're just looking at each other.